Hello everyone, my name is Nathan Hurley. I'm Research and Insight Manager here at Orangebox. Welcome to London Smart Working. Today I'm going to be showcasing our brand new product platform, Campers&Dens. So let's go and have a little look. So what is Campers&Dens? What is it all about? Well, if you think about your camping experience, then there are clear rules of engagement, and we intuitively know the rules of a campsite. So when you're in the morning walking your dog in the open field, then you can chat to anybody. You're open for business. And then of course, when you're in your camper van or in your tent, you're in your own private bubble. You wouldn't expect to be interrupted. And then in that middle ground where you've created an awning or you've created a windbreak, then you'd probably need to gesture to somebody before they came over for a coffee or a glass of wine. So there are layers of privacy on our campsites, and we intuitively know them. And that's what we're starting to create for the contemporary workplace, creating those layers of privacy that allow our users and our colleagues of a space to feel more comfortable when moving between those layers of privacy. So Campers&Dens as a product platform is all about creating those different layers and expanding just beyond the singular pod. So at Orangebox, we've got quite a pedigree when it comes to designing and installing pods. It was 13 years ago when we first developed our system, and Campers&Dens has been 5 years in the making. Now, the reason why you specify a pod in the first place is relatively straightforward. If you're looking for a bit of privacy, a meeting room out in the open plan office and away from the central building core, then pods are a great flexible option. They can be built in 4 or 5 hours, moved to another location or another floor in another number of hours, all independent of the building systems themselves. It's a simple plug and play operation. I want to start with the beautiful box. All of the engineering and the engineering lessons that we've learned from those 13 years of development all boiled down to what we're calling here the beautiful box. This is CDO5, the largest pod in phase 1. It's 2.9 meters by 3 meters. And a couple of developments that you may miss, you may not pick up, but are really integral to the success of the product. And that's its adjustable bass track. And that's really important for us to have, because when we've got uneven floors in some client spaces, creating that solid sealed foundation is really important for acoustics and the ability to build the pod correctly. And the other thing that you'll notice, of course, is we've got a new paneling system. So we're now able to specify glass on glass, have glass corners, and it makes the product really light, quite contemporary, and it gives great line of sight, good vision when you're both in the pod and out of the pod. But those are 2 new additions, but something that we've definitely kept from our air system is, of course, the opening roof. Now, the opening roof is so important for fire safety, for compliance all over the globe. And if I'm to walk into the product, immediately the opening roof will close. So while the roof is open, that's getting lots of fresh air into the pod product. And as soon as I walk in, the PIR sensor is triggered, and of course that opening louvered roof will start to close. Now, the reason why that's really important, of course, is that if the smoke detector picks up a fire or smoke in the pod itself, those louvered roof springs open, and that's really important to allow for sprinkler ingress into the pod when there is, of course, a fire. So the pod's intelligence all sits within this central service hoop. We've built the pod around this service hoop, and so all of the lighting, ventilation, all of the intelligence within the pod is structured within here. Now, as designers, we want to make the product as comfortable as possible for the users within it, and what's fundamental to their comfort is ventilation, airflow, and the lighting within the pod itself. When we talk about ventilation, we've got a brand new system here. So more powerful fans, but importantly, quieter fans too. So we're drawing the air-conditioned air outside of the pod through the low vents here, and then we're pulling that up through these brand new fan systems in the service hoop. Also, when we think about lighting, it's really important to give people a really comfortable but well illuminated work setting. So whether it's lounge or an office or a meeting space, we want people to feel comfortable and illuminated. We've got a brand new dark light LED system, meaning that it's comfortable for those within but not disruptive for those outside of the pod. So you'll see that there's a slight ingress to the LEDs that you might not see that outside of the pod, so that's great. And then all of that intelligence is controlled here within the control panel. So there are 4 different light settings. There's an auto refresh which opens the roof, puts the fans on full, giving people a great refresh. And then there's some other controls, of course, for the opening roof and then the ventilation. The great thing about it is that I don't need to be in the pod to control those functions at all. It can be run on an app called Campers&Dens, and if I'm a facilities manager, I can have control over my pod but not even be in the building. So as an asset, I can control and manage that from wherever. Importantly, in the future, also we can integrate to booking systems, and I can really understand who's using my pods, how long have they been in there, and what time of day they're really popular. So those sorts of things are really important. So a way that we can extend the architecture of the pod in really quite a small way, but a really characterful one, is by specifying this kink here. And you can see that adds lots of personality to the beautiful box itself. And it signifies the entrance of the pod, just like a porch would signify the entrance of your cabin or your house. And you can see here that it's specified and clad in and finished in a plywood, and that really highlights lots of options that we have on Campers&Dens. And so in addition to what you'd expect, which is upholstered paneling, we of course have glass, we have wood, we have Fenix, we have whiteboards inside and outside, so lots of different options. One thing I did want to mention about our upholstered panels here, we're not gluing them at all. That's not good for the planet. So within this panel, we can just stretch over the fabric, we can stretch and clip it into that panel itself, meaning that we can extend the life of the product. We can change out the upholstery and change it to whatever you feel is necessary to your next scheme. When you move the pod, we can also change the finishes that are clad inside and outside. We spoke earlier about creating layers of privacy within our contemporary workplace, and with Campers&Dens, we're extending the architecture beyond the pod to give us those extra layers of privacy. And nowhere is that better exemplified than our awning component to the camper. So as you can see here, instead of creating really boring corridors in our workplaces, now we can create these avenues where you can specify a pod and then have this awning structure. So 5 minutes before a meeting, 5 minutes after a meeting, these quick catch-up spaces. It defines the area outside of the pod. And we were talking earlier about gesturing. You know, if you were having a little meeting here, you would need to gesture for somebody to join your meeting space. The awning itself can be stretch fabric, it can be felt, it can be felt slats, it can be wooden slats, or a really nice cord design too, to give you different layers of that privacy. Awnings don't have to be attached to the pod at all. They can be totally independent and freestanding. They can create these wonderful avenues in the open floor plan. Another component of Campers&Dens are cabins, and it's again extending the architecture beyond just the pod. Now, cabins are great because they create little nooks, little private areas for people to break away from the noisy office. You can either specify a cabin on the back of a pod on its own, and so it creates these extra different work settings, or we can create this through cabin where it connects 2 different pods together, and then you create this really secluded moment of focus. So if you come into this environment, we've got all different types of work settings. We've got a high table, low table, more softer lounge environments. And you can just be in here and nobody would really know. It's kind of nice and private. All integrated lighting, independent of the pod itself, and you have two different roof options, either an open system or something like this, which is closed off, giving you a little bit more privacy. We've learned over the years that we need to provide as many options as possible when it comes to integrated furniture. We have no idea whether it's going to be an individual office, a nice lounging meeting room, or a video conferencing space. So we need to offer as many options as possible when it comes to the interior space. Also, a development for Campers&Dens is that we've allowed power to be accessed from the outside of the pod. So that means that a meeting space can easily be extended outside of the pod as well. So again, extending that architecture. So when we're designing and specifying pods, acoustic privacy is obviously really important for people inside the pod and of course for people outside of the pod. And we've taken Campers&Dens to the next level. The upholstered panel you can see behind me, behind that there is a perforated acoustic cassette. Now that perforation is really important because it captures the really low frequencies, which are quite troublesome in causing disruption, and then the higher frequencies get bounced back, so it's really good for acoustic control. Another great thing that we've incorporated into Campers&Dens is this drop seal at the bottom of the door. That allows us to capture any unwanted frequencies escaping. So we close the door and then the drop seal drops as soon as that door is closed, keeping all the unwanted frequencies and noise inside or outside the pod. So when it comes to having fun with Campers&Dens, we've created a hacking system. We don't want our pods to look like our pods, we want your pod to look like your pod. And so we have a hacking frame that sits on the exterior of the pod itself, meaning that you can specify these slats or put some stretch fabric over these slats or having it nice and flush. It means that you can create something really quite unique. Campers&Dens is more than just a pod. We're now able, with these extra layers of privacy, to create campgrounds in our office environments. So whether you're using your campground to pop up a tent or whether you're part of the caravan club, Campers&Dens as a system allows you a different variety of work settings, giving you extra layers of privacy. So I hope you enjoyed the product demonstration. For all the resources that you may need, head to our website or contact your business development manager or your account manager, and stay tuned for all the new phases that are going to be coming through in 2021.